Are we on camera here?
No.
The ladies will.
Good evening and welcome to the Tibet Center. So we will begin by reading the prayer for the spreading of the teachings throughout the length and breadth of the West, which you will find in the FAQ section if you scroll down on the Tibet Center website. All the prayers are there. By the force of the blessings of the non-fallacious three precious gems and of the truth of our pure selfless wishes, may the precious Buddhist teachings flourish and spread to the expanse of all areas throughout the length and breadth of the West. For all the people living there, together with their near ones, who have engaged in the teachings and have faith and respect for them, may all conditions adverse to their practice of the pure Dharma be dispelled, and an excellent collection of favorable conditions increase like the waxing moon. And especially for those who work on methods to accomplish the flourishing and spreading of the victorious one's teachings, which are the source of benefit and happiness, may they never be oppressed by masses of interference and adverse conditions, and may this spontaneously happen just as we had hoped and wished. The Heart Sutra. Thus have I heard once. The Blessed One was dwelling on the royal domain of the Victory Mountain together with a big gathering of great monks and great bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi which explains
called profound illumination.
At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the profound practice of transcendent knowledge, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Avalokiteshvara, "How should those noble ones learn who wish to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge?" And Avalokiteshvara answered, "Venerable Shariputra, whoever wishes to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge should look at it like this, seeing the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness itself is form, emptiness is not separate from form, form is not separate from emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discriminating awareness, compositional factors in consciousness are empty. Thus all the dharmas are empty and have no characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, since there is emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discriminating awareness, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no objects of mind, no quality of sight, no quality of hearing, no quality of smelling, no quality of tasting, no quality of sensing, no quality of thought, no quality of mind consciousness. There are no nidanas from ignorance to old age and death, nor their wearing out. There is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no ending of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, no non-attainment. Therefore, since there is no attainment, the bodhisattvas abide by means of transcendent knowledge, and since there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. They transcend falsity and pass beyond the sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the past, present, and future, by means of transcendent knowledge, fully and clearly awaken to unsurpassed, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of transcendent knowledge, the mantra of deep insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth.
So there is no deception. In transcendent knowledge, the mantra is proclaimed.
Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhisattva. O Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should learn profound transcendent knowledge. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, profound transcendent knowledge should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara, that whole gathering with the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, their hearts full of joy, praised the words of the Blessed One. We generate bodhicitta. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. So let us recite one rosary of Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. So, we've been discussing Beyond Religion, Ethics for a Whole World by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And we have two things going. We have the pace of the New York group, and we have here in New Jersey. They're just a little bit different, but they're around the same place. And I think that we reached I'm going to go to page 144. We probably went farther than that. So this is in the section on contentment, developing contentment. Okay, 144. So, this is a discussion group, not a teaching. And let us start with, so there's a line at the top of the page that says, one might say contentment can't be practiced. It has to be arrived at. What do you think of that?
That's a bummer, because this slip line has to be arrived at. In other words, change maybe our personality and it comes, make yourself available to it. Maybe I'm thinking that way. Allow it to come to you. I don't know.
But how do you,
Maybe.
what do you do so that it can be arrived at? That's the question.
So, if it can't be practiced, which would be the process to arrive at it, what is meant by this?
You get rid of things that stand in its way. Maybe it's a cleaning out. An arrival by, what's the word? Purging, cleansing, confession, etc.
I think that going from previous sections of the book, we could try to see the situation in more than one way, or see that there's more than one way to see it, and then choose to have the thought that tends towards the contented thought, or leads you to feeling contented rather than the one that may aggravate you.
What are you saying?
So there's aspects to a situation,
Yeah.
perhaps many different aspects, and we can choose to dwell on one or the other, or see them in their entirety maybe. And then by choosing those aspects that would give us contented thoughts,
Don't shake.
we can be more content.
So, His Holiness goes into the idea that contentment is developing the ability to know what is enough and to know when to be happy with what we have, content. So that's not something that is practiced, it's something that is, you are there. I find it interesting. I've never, most of the practices that we talk about are to be cultivated, to be developed, to be, as you say, you contemplate the negative qualities of not working towards contentment, the benefits of contentment.
Yeah, contentment isn't, it can't be a practice because it's a result. You know, it's like being hungry. It's like you realize that you're hungry. It's like, oh, I'm hungry. I want to eat something.
No, it's the opposite of being hungry.
Well, yes, it is. But it's like happiness then.
It's having had
You
your
don't
cake.
practice happiness. You can't sit down and all of a sudden all the happy things in the world, you can think about them, but you have to create the causes and conditions, right? You have to live ethically, and you have to practice the path to reach contentment.
Able to find satisfaction without looking for more.
Yeah,
That's one of the lines.
It's
That's
like
a big
enlightenment.
one.
You can't
Recognize
practice
that.
enlightenment, right?
No, but you have to practice in order to attain enlightenment.
Right. And I think, isn't contentment the same?
Well, that's why this is an interesting sentence. So, he then explains contentment. When I talk about contentment as an ethical value in this way, what I really am talking about is not a general state of well-being or happiness, but a more specific notion of contentment in Tibetan we call chogshe. I don't know of any simple translation of this term in English or any other Western language, and since it is generally translated as contentment, I also use the term. However, what chogshe really means is an absence of greed. So it's a state of being. It's not it's not something that you're working on. It's an actual state. An absence of greed. Literally, it means knowing what is enough or knowing when to be contented. It means being able to find satisfaction without looking for more.
A kind of discrimination.
What is being discriminated?
Well, if we have the example of eating something, maybe we know just when to stop. Or when, maybe we should stop just before we've had enough. Still wanting more.
So I find this knowing when to be content. So that suggests a certain objective overview of the process of eating. So this demands enormous self-control. Or your cookies provide a very good... we've had to put them in the cold...
Yeah. Yeah, because we started on a roll. Shame on you.
So contentment, according to this view, is something like the virtue of moderation. It implies a certain modesty of ambition, or having limited desires. By living modestly and setting reasonable limits, we free ourselves from the sense of insecurity and insufficiency born of incessant craving.
That's what starts the habit pattern of craving.
So by living modestly and setting reasonable limits, we free ourselves. So there is a technique. The technique is to live modestly and set reasonable limits. We thereby free ourselves from the sense of insecurity and insufficiency born of incessant craving. So insufficiency is born of craving. It's not that insufficiency is necessary. And I think there is insufficiency when you are starving. But here what's being talked about is the insufficiency that we feel.
He uses the word craving, which is unnatural. Grasping craving. One of the 12 links that keeps us in samsara. How funny.
Yeah, sometimes it's really hard to know what
That
what you're craving isn't something that you necessarily need, that it's something you want.
Yes.
Like at some level, if you haven't eaten in 3 days, you really need food. But when I have breakfast and lunch, and then there's a snack, I don't really need the
Yes.
snack.
Come on.
And that's,
But it could also be about wanting more.
yes, yeah, or overeating,
Because it doesn't satisfy the craving.
yeah,
Yes, it's insufficient.
yeah.
That's activated craving.
Like the potato chip. You just can't have one because it creates the craving.
You're blaming the potato chip.
No, I'm blaming, well, in a way, yes, because, you know, they're so salty and wonderful.
By practicing contentment, we allow ourselves to rest in an underlying state of satisfaction, confident in the knowledge that we are living by the ideals we seek to uphold. So this is the result. This is very much a result. By limiting our wants and desires, we avoid suffering, the dissatisfaction and frustration which greed generates. Well, that paragraph is really a major life goal.
If you develop that state, you never have a feeling of inadequacy or I'm not getting enough or whatever. If you can develop that state.
So we live in a society where everything is being done to keep us from thinking this way.
That's right.
And
That's
so
the wrong.
I think it's wonderful, I should say, that we're sitting here discussing this. And I'm going to read it again just to indulge in that wonder. So contentment, according to this view, is something like the virtue of moderation. So that first step, moderation, is, I think, very much a first step. It implies a certain modesty of ambition or having limited desires. By living modestly and setting reasonable limits, we free ourselves from the sense of insecurity and insufficiency born of incessant craving. By practicing contentment, we allow ourselves to rest in an underlying state of satisfaction.
Rest. Rest in the good one.
Confident in the knowledge that we are living by the ideals we seek to uphold. By limiting our wants and desires, we avoid suffering the dissatisfaction and frustration which greed generates.
Yes.
So we have to recognize when we become greedy, we have to recognize our own greed.
Mm-hmm.
Chocolate.
And I like how it,
Cats.
well,
Yes.
I like how he
One
says,
piece of chocolate is okay, 10 pieces not okay. 10
Yeah.
pieces is greed.
What about 9?
gluttony.
We gotta negotiate.
In the middle, he says, an underlying state of satisfaction.
Yeah.
Like,
That's,
it was just kind of pointing out that it's there. We're muddying the waters by craving and thinking of other things. The satisfaction is always there.
available to us.
Yeah, so the practice would be getting rid of the things that block the satisfaction.
This craving is kind of complex, isn't it? I mean, how do we get to crave so much?
If we indulge desire just a little bit,
A little
it
bit more, a little bit more.
takes hold of
And then it
us.
becomes like a habit, and you just want a little bit more, just a little bit more, just one more. Yeah.
Please.
So Richard Wilson sends the comment, contentment feels similar to a destination someplace you arrive at.
That's the one.
So contentment,
The place you arrive at. Oh, as you feel that you're aiming for this thing and you got there finally, is that what he means?
yeah.
Mm.
So I think that contentment feels it feels similar to a destination someplace you arrive at. Contentment might feel like not having to get to a destination at all.
So, right, yeah.
As soon as you have an aim that you wish to arrive at, you're setting yourself up. That sort of counters the idea of contentment, as I understand it.
Maybe this place is nice, but it's not as good as the Laguna Beach or something. Or what. I don't know. Okay, Rahul is defining the goal.
Related to the suffering of change.
Yes.
Also, what exactly is the suffering of change?
So the pleasures that we possess are impermanent, come to an end. So that part of the nature of even the pleasures we experience
It's just that.
Only expresses around.
So Steve Burns says it's the result of a thought process.
What?
Contentment is a result of a thought process. Well,
In analytical. Yeah.
yes, engaging in analytical meditation leads to, and these are an understanding that indulging our desires, our attachments, lead to dissatisfaction. But Steve, if you find that perfect camera,
Yes.
you will attain a certain contentment.
Shouldn't it be exaggeration? I mean, craving is directing you toward things that you need, to eat, to marry, to go to a warm place from a cold place. And then there's this dimension of the exaggeration of these, repetition and exaggeration of
So to eat, to marry, and to go to a warm place from a cold place. Each of those, as we develop more contentment, we can handle not having. If we are in a cold place, we are able to put up with the cold more easily if we work at developing contentment. We can remain unmarried. And what was the last one?
I'm just saying these are basic human animal needs. I mean, this is this sort of impulse to migrate, the impulse to marry, the impulse to feed oneself. These are all basic on the sort of human animal level, and it's the exaggeration of these things that becomes a problem.
So,
Exaggeration of
so even the exaggerating is suggesting that there is a medium. Yes?
There is enough.
And that line, I think, changes as we practice.
right, exactly. So how can you be content with what you have rather than thinking it should be more?
Yep. Well, so having this discussion, and even what Susan you just brought up, the simply discussing it helps, and realizing that there isn't a perfect, a perfect mean. Contentment is definitely something that we can raise the bar higher and higher. Geshe Yunting Gyatso, who came here many times, would, whenever you offered him something more than he needed, another piece of bread at breakfast or whatever it was, his response was mogo. Mogo is not no thank you. Mogo is I don't need it. And I remember thinking that's a very high standard. If my standard for accepting something more is that I don't need it, I'll never be able to indulge my sweet tooth. But that's something to work towards. And I think we also have to recognize that when we attain that, we derive a certain, he talks about a certain pleasure, a certain...
Contentment.
Yeah. We avoid suffering the dissatisfaction and frustration which greed generates. So that's interesting, because the suffering dissatisfaction doesn't come from our not getting what we want, it comes from the greed.
That created this wanting all the time. These things happen so fast, it's hard to see these forces at play in the mind. They go so quick, I want this. And it really takes work to dig in and watch your mind every tenth of a second.
So I know that we discussed, I think here, we discussed contentment before, but I really feel that just talking about it like this helps develop that recognition, and I hope it helps you when you go to work tomorrow morning.
It gives you a vocabulary to examine things with, this, how to address your internal parade that's going on. These give you little hints and ideas of what's going on. The idea these subtle forces, greed, craving, etc., come up without a big announcement that just seems to be there. How did that happen?
Natural.
Yeah, it's natural.
So there's a saying in Tibetan,
At the door.
at the door of the miserable rich man sleeps the contented beggar. The point is not that poverty is a virtue, but that happiness comes not from wealth, but from setting limits on our desires and living within those limits with satisfaction.
What you said, one of the problems with the discussion is that greed gives a negative spin on this natural human propensity. But what if you framed it by saying that peace of mind is preferable, that rest is preferable to the longing that accompanies, craving more, you have to go and get it, and that peace, or a peaceful mind, or a pattern of life is preferable to being disrupted in that pattern and having to go after things.
So you're saying the whole idea of bringing greed into the mix, it's preferable to see it from a more positive...
That if you create a pattern of life in which your needs are met, and you have peace of mind, then that's preferable to living in an agitated state where you feel inadequate, as you were saying, and you feel like you need something else. But we live in a society that stresses, the mechanism in the society, the consumer society is all about needing things you don't have. It's an engine, and so it really is recognizing that you don't. But you can rest in the pattern of your own life and not having to give way to these.
It's motivation by positivity versus motivation by negativity.
There's nothing wrong with you for wanting.
But for me, I'm kind of the opposite. I read the greed in there and I was like, oh yeah, like it's really hard to recognize when you're caught up in the day-to-day life. It's like, oh yeah, that's greedy. Like, and so when Tony said we have words now, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can ask myself, not I don't need it, but am I being greedy? Like, is wanting a new whatever make me greedy, or is it something that I truly need? It's like, it's very easy when you have wealth and money, which, you know, we live in the first world. It's just easy to get stuff, but do we need it? And if I look at it as like that's being greedy.
The aggravated rich man represents the first world.
Mm-hmm.
Another frame of reference that would go back to what you were saying about natural needs or urges is using evolutionary psychology, their frame of reference, where they would say that, you know, you have these needs or desires that help you survive, and then when you get to a point of greed, I think you could say that it's gone awry. These old habit patterns are no longer necessary in my life because I don't need to be greedy, but I am because of these primitive urges that we have, and they're just kind of out of place and gone awry. And that just adds a little more to this, but I don't think it's necessary to look at, you know, at greed to think that way, but it seems to add a little more for me.
I think another way of describing that is that those needs, or that mechanism of desire that had utility in the far past when there was much less resources, now we still carry it, but then there's so much resources that it goes awry. Or
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's the perfect way to say it. Yeah.
Isn't the real problem one of meaning, though?
Sorry?
Isn't the real problem one of meaning? In other words, people have to have sufficient meaning. I think even beyond ethics, you have to feel that your life is meaningful without going off in these other directions. I mean, when you say, I saw you saying, you know, we accept that there is no self. If there is no self, then what is there? Where does the meaning lie?
Who's doing the craving?
I mean, people, one of the things that leads to contentment is the sense that your life has meaning. What you're doing has meaning, and that you don't have to do something else to make it meaningful, like buy something or eat something, whatever. But I mean, that's the question that I would ask to you: is when you say there is no self, what is there? What else do people fall back on? And there has to be some meaning there.
So, I mean, working towards living an ethical life where we are of benefit to others, or we're working towards making others the purpose of our efforts or our lives. That can all be done. Actually, we say that can be done more effectively as we diminish our grasping at a sense of self. That sense of self, that self-grasping, inhibits our ability to lead a compassionate life. The more compassionate we are, the more concerned with others we are, the less we hold on to that self. And the more we diminish our self-grasping, the more we develop a concern for others. Gosh.
It's becoming a sitcom.
Okay, Richard Wilson. I stand corrected. Contentment is always there if we choose to recognize it.
I'm glad he can.
Well, that's. I'm not sure that we can say that contentment is always there. The opportunity to be content is there if we. And choosing to recognize it is a big chore. We have to recognize the negative aspects of discontentment and the qualities of being content. So Steve Burns says, the perfect camera is the one I have with me. Oh, I'm so glad, Steve, that you have a perfect camera with you. And Richard says, our society encourages us to always want more. Correct. Yes. So, yes, I agree, Steve. The perfect camera is the one we have with us.
In His Holiness's quote, it does refer to something underlying.
We allow ourselves to rest in an underlying state of satisfaction.
So what does the underlying mean?
That there is some, within our lives, there is, within situations, there is a state of contentment or potential contentment there.
Could it be related to there being a lack of an inherent self?
Go for it. Explain.
So if we
He's
have
just
that,
done a whole training in debate, so
Yeah.
he's rearing at the bit.
I see,
Go
we
ahead.
gotta go back and get more.
so if we have that recognition, then what is there to desire, and who is it that desires? So if we can,
If we have that recognition, which recognition?
the recognition that whatever thing we desire, when examined amongst its parts, is not findable, and then
Yeah.
we ourselves, who we assume to be findable, is likewise not findable amongst our parts.
Uh-huh.
Then who needs something, and what is it that they need? Or we?
So I've tried that with cameras.
It's helpful. Helpful.
I definitely haven't got the realization of emptiness
Yeah.
of self, and I can sort of take apart the parts of a camera and see it as an imputed. But I find that more effective is to recognize that desire only grows. That the more we indulge it, the more it consumes us, and that if we work at the opposite, if we work towards this, the perfect camera is the one I have with me, being content with what we have, that not only it really works. There's a lightness, there's a calm, an inner calm that takes you over.
So say again, what works?
So I have found that working on the analytical meditation to dissemble the parts of a camera and see that it is merely imputed doesn't really diminish my attachment. But if I really think about how simply being content with what I have, working towards simply pushing that desire aside and recognizing that one is happier, one is lighter, free of that. That I find that more effective.
Mm.
But that's at my level. You
No, likewise. Lower, I think.
But theoretically, as we progress, the more of a realization of emptiness we would have, the more we would diminish the basis for having attachment, having desires, having all of those things stem from grasping at a sense of self.
So, could you say more about the realization of emptiness that's accessible to us?
Well, the aspect of the realization of emptiness that is accessible to us is to study, is to read about emptiness, the texts on Nagarjuna's middle way philosophy, and come to understand initially what the self is that has to be negated, coming to understand what this sense of self is, and then you apply the logic that takes apart how that could exist logically, and then facing the conclusion that, gosh, there can't be a self. Now, we go through those steps consciously, logically, like that, but then we have to deepen that and have it actually affect the way in which we are, the way in which we
The way in which we are, that's good. I think.
and that takes, lifetimes of study and practice and meditation, to the point where there's no basis for holding on to a sense of self. That direct realization of the emptiness of self shatters the basis for this whole the existence of cyclic existence. Samsara, cyclic existence, crumbles when there is no, when you experience, when you realize that lack of self. That self, that whole grasping itself, is the basis for cyclic existence, which has as its nature suffering. But what I've just said is like, I've simplified what the whole Buddhist practice is about, and it's not really fair to do that. But you asked for it, so
Nagarjuna said everything stems from grasping at an uninherent self, that starts the whole ball.
If you are talking about the person who has lost everything,
Possibly a
So what do
family
they
member
attach
or
to?
something.
What do they attach their sense of themselves to? See, they're facing a loss of sense of self, right? Yeah.
no, they aren't. I think that the people, you have, every single person who has experienced that kind of loss, that sudden loss of all the things that they own, from one moment to the next, they have nothing. They don't own the house that they worked so hard to build. They don't own the possessions that they acquired, that they collected. They don't. It's all gone. But each one of those people who experiences it totally differently, depending on where they've, their sort of spiritual maturity. You have those who laugh and say, that's removed all the obstacles of my life.
Yes.
There are those who are miserable and who feel that they have worked so hard to develop this and they don't have it anymore. there are two sort of sides to
Yes,
each
I'm familiar
person
with side.
will have experienced it totally differently. And these are very personal, inner things that it's very hard for us to say anything about what they're experiencing. What we're doing here is exploring how we can work on ourselves to diminish the unhappiness that we feel out of not getting what we want. That's what we're working at. We suffer out of not being content. Yes? I mean, I know I do.
And maybe not knowing where content is found. That's,
And I think
the people who have the strongest sense of self, who lost everything, are suffering the most now, because they've lost everything. Well, they never had it. If you truly understand emptiness, I only have all the things I have because of karma I created in the past. So if I lose it, it's oh well, like my karma ran out. Now I gotta go and create good karma all over again to get it all back. Now that's really easy for me to say because I'm gonna go home to a nice warm house tonight.
maybe.
Maybe, that's true. Actually,
power goes off, you don't.
I was at a funeral this weekend, and they mentioned this, what's called the suddenly sermon. And because you don't know if you're gonna have a house to go back to tonight. It's like we think everything's always gonna be there, and we think the whole world around us is gonna be all around us, because it is right now. But we could walk out that door now, and everything we know could be gone, and it will happen to us eventually.
Oh, yeah.
You know, whether it's, you're gonna lose loved ones, you're eventually gonna lose your own life, and then the sooner you realize that it's not really your life and your body, the better.
But here, what we're really working at understanding is that as we develop contentment, as we work at being more content, we become happier. And I think that's really
It pays dividends.
and so this paragraph is something to chew on as we go about our lives, and it's not just the acquiring of things; it's the wishing for situations. It works in all sorts of ways, but the opposite is just to content ourselves with what we have, and that's really one of the secrets to happiness. So he says, the materialism of modern society makes the practice of moderation and contentment a daily necessity if we are to resist succumbing to a sense of personal dissatisfaction born of unrealistic craving. Cultivating contentment is especially important, I feel, in today's materialistic world of global consumerism. Materialistic society puts people under constant pressure to want more and to spend more long after their basic needs are satisfied. Sophisticated advertising is designed to excite the imagination and to generate a perception that material goods will make us happy and that we are somehow lacking unless we acquire the latest accessory, gadget, or fashion item. Well, I think we're all familiar with that. We're all aware of that. Controlling our desire for more, learning to live within realistic limits is not only in our own individual interest, it is also necessary if we are to overcome the challenges to life on Earth that our incessant quest for more generates. The material resources of this planet are finite. Add the fact that global population is rising rapidly, and that those in the less developed countries naturally aspire to the same level of comfort enjoyed in the developed world, as is their right, and it becomes clear that our present path is unsustainable. The world's great natural spaces do much to maintain the environment equilibrium of the planet, yet forests, oceans, and other natural environments are being encroached on and destroyed. And during my own lifetime, many species of animals and plants have become extinct. So the comfortable modern lifestyles that many of us take for granted and many others aspire to actually come at a considerable cost. Well, I think that's sort of a good place to So that's this. I think that we've had not only a clear picture of the situation on planet Earth, but I think that more important in terms of our practice is working towards cultivating contentment within ourselves. In order to...
We're the only ones who can do it.
No, but I think that working towards sort of ecological is important. We have to do that. That's a necessity. But I think that the other is the real spiritual work. I think the other is working inside. I mean, yes, compost, separate the different things when you throw out. I try to do that.
We're mandated, right? The garbage time, you have to put this there and that there.
What are you saying is the real spiritual work?
Working towards recognizing the suffering that we experience as a result of discontentment and the happiness that we develop as we work towards contentment, and based on that work towards developing contentment. That's an inner thing. It's not so much turning lights off. We have to turn the lights off. I think that's a responsibility, a societal responsibility. But the inner work is recognizing the suffering that we experience. I'm using the word suffering. I think it's sort of like a generic discontentment that I'm just using that term for. But it's we experience unhappiness so easily as we go about our days when we don't get what we want or have things the way we want them, or when we're not able to acquire that which we feel is a necessity. And we really have to work at applying the antidote to that, which is contentment. And you do that by recognizing the happiness that you derive from that contentment. Yes.
So the happiness is just part of the road to equanimity then. The goal then is of contentment. The happiness that we get from contentment is just the road, the
Oh, these are people to pray for.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Ready? And you all have to.
So we've been asked to pray for Kuei Lu, Venerable Ingrid Nordzin, and Venerable Bhikshuni Tupten Nordzin. Oh, that may be the same person. I don't know. So, the Sutra of the Recollection of the Noble Three Jewels. I prostrate to the Omniscient One, thus the Buddha, Bhagavat, Tathagata, Arhat, Samyak Sambuddha, the learned and virtuous one, the Sugata, the knower of the world, the charioteer and tamer of beings, the unsurpassable one, the teacher of devas and humans is the Buddha Bhagavat. The Tathagata is in accord with all merit. He does not waste the roots of virtue. He is completely ornamented with all patience. He is the basis of the treasures of merit. He is adorned with the minor marks. He blossoms with the flowers of the major marks. His activity is timely and appropriate. Seeing him is without disharmony. He brings true joy to those who long with faith. His knowledge cannot be overpowered. His strength cannot be challenged. He is the teacher of all sentient beings. He is the father of bodhisattvas. He is the king of noble ones. He is the guide of those who journey to the city of nirvana. He possesses immeasurable wisdom. He possesses inconceivable confidence. His speech is completely pure. His melody is pleasing. One never has enough of seeing him. His form is incomparable. He is not stained by the realm of desire. He is not stained by the realm of form. He is not affected by the formless realm. He is completely liberated from suffering. He is completely and utterly liberated from the skandhas. He is not possessed with dhatus. His ayatanas are controlled. He has completely cut the knots. He is completely liberated from extreme torment. He is liberated from craving. He has crossed over the river. He is perfected in all the wisdoms. He abides in the wisdom of the Buddha Bhagavats who arise in the past, present, and future. He does not abide in nirvana. He abides in the ultimate perfection. He dwells on the bhumi where he sees all sentient beings. All these are the perfect virtues of the greatness of the Buddha Bhagavat. The holy Dharma is good at the beginning, good in the middle, and good at the end. Its meaning is excellent. Its words are excellent. It is uncorrupted. It is completely perfect and completely pure. It completely purifies. The Bhagavat teaches the Dharma well. It brings complete vision. It is free from sickness. It is always timely. It directs one further. Seeing it fulfills one's purpose. It brings discriminating insight for the wise. The Dharma which is taught by the Bhagavad is revealed properly in the Vinaya. It is renunciation. It causes one to arrive at perfect enlightenment. It is without contradiction. It is pithy. It is trustworthy and puts an end to the journey. As for the Sangha of the great Yana, they enter completely, they enter insightfully, they enter straightforwardly, they enter harmoniously, they are worthy of veneration with joined palms, they are worthy of receiving prostration, they are a field of glorious merit, they are completely capable of receiving all gifts, they are an object of generosity, they are a great object of complete generosity.
Protector who possesses great kindness.
The omniscient teacher, the basis of oceans of merit and virtue, I prostrate to the Tathagata. Pure, the cause of freedom from passion, virtuous, liberating from the lower realms. This alone is the supreme ultimate truth. I prostrate to the Dharma, which is peace. Having been liberated, they show the path to liberation. They are fully dedicated to the disciplines. They are a holy field of merit and possess virtue. I prostrate to the Sangha. I prostrate to the Buddha, the leader. I prostrate to the Dharma, the protector. I prostrate to the Sangha, the community. I prostrate respectfully and always to these three. The Buddha's virtues are inconceivable. The Dharma's virtues are inconceivable. The Sangha's virtues are inconceivable. Having faith in these inconceivables, therefore the fruitions are inconceivable. May they be born in a completely pure realm. Okay, we'll read the 8 verses on training the mind. With the determination to accomplish the highest welfare of all sentient beings who surpass even a wish-granting jewel, I will learn to hold them supremely dear. Whenever I associate with others, I will learn to think of myself as the lowest amongst all, and respectfully hold others to be supreme from the very depths of my heart. In all actions I will learn to search into my mind, and as soon as a disturbing emotion arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly face and avert it. I will learn to cherish ill-natured beings and those oppressed by strong misdeeds and sufferings, as if I had found a precious treasure difficult to find. When others, out of jealousy, treat me badly, with abuse, slander, and so on, I will learn to take all loss and offer the victory to them. When the one whom I have benefited with great hope unreasonably hurts me very badly, I will learn to view that person as an excellent spiritual guide. In short, I will learn to offer to everyone without exception all help and happiness directly and indirectly, and respectfully take upon myself all harm and suffering of my others. I will learn to keep all these practices undefiled by the stains of the 8 worldly concerns, and by understanding all phenomena as like illusions, be released from the bondage of attachment. And now a prayer for the swift return of Chungla Rinpoche. Exalted wisdom of all victors gathered in a drop, sole refuge manifest in the form of the one wearing saffron robes, Guru Lobsang Tuwang Dorje Chang, please bear witness here today that our prayers may be fulfilled. We beseech the great torch of doctrine, accomplishing from long ago the vast ways of aspirational prayers, Lord of speech of the victor Lobsang's teachings, spreading them to the ends of the earth by means of explanation and practice. Though holding the commitment, I will invite all beings to be my guests in unsurpassed great awakening, yet you have withdrawn the activities of the form body that serves the welfare of others. Is that worthy of the supreme among beings, the Bodhisattvas? Though impossible for you till sickness ends to abandon your commitment to liberate all beings, we beseech the new son of Nirmanakaya to swiftly return from the realm of Dharmakaya, brought forth by Bodhicitta drawn by 7 steeds. Having reached the far limits of scholarship, religious life, and goodness, please come swiftly as unrivaled supreme emanation, full holder of the sage's teachings, and wish-fulfilling jewel. Return as the glory of Losang Tempe. Magnificent truth of the 3 precious jewels, Mahakala, Karmayama, and Srimati Devi, and the ocean of Dharma protectors, may you spontaneously fulfill our wish, the swift blossoming of the incarnation's fresh moonlight face.
You have a cat, right? Oh, you don't?
Not anymore. Frank Sundell and I put it.
Frank Sundell, okay, he's gone. He ran for 4 terms, you know that? All the soups. The return of the escargot.